Hey, what's up, Biggin? All right. Get it how you live. What's up? That's what's up, man. I'm getting there, man. Just winding down, after this award show. Give some thought to what's occurred, happy for Baker. They turned this award show into the Baker Mayfield Award Show, which is great. Kind of feels like college football said, a mass press release said, we're just going to rename every trophy the Baker Mayfield Trophy, or at the very least give Baker Mayfield every trophy except the United States Award. F those guys. That's pretty much how it felt, with the exception of Orlando Brown getting robbed. Man, Oliver's good. He wasn't that good. But, I'm also an OU fan, and I feel some kind of way about the best left tackle in college football being robbed of the Allen Trophy. But anyway, what's going on with you?
Nothing much. Just kind of starting to get into everything here. You've already kind of gone into a little bit on the awards tonight. Looks like OU did a pretty good job for the most part, clearing out the major awards they were up for, particularly Baker. But yeah, so what were some of the awards done tonight? I can't remember the specific name of the one for Baker that he just won, the Maxwell, I believe it was.
So Baker won the Maxwell Award, which is a Player of the Year award. He won the Walter Camp Award, which is another Player of the Year award. And he won the Davey O'Brien Award, which is the top quarterback in college football award, which is kind of funny, again, because he got robbed the Unitas Award.
Yeah.
Or at least he got robbed of the Unitas Award, but he won the Unitas Golden Arm Award, which I don't know how the math works on that, but I assume Mike Gundy and Gary Patterson had something to do with it.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. I know we were talking about that a little bit the other day, how it's surprisingly rare for the Unitas Award to line up with the what was the other award that's basically the same thing. But
the Davey O'Brien.
Yes, yeah. And when I was initially, I remember I posted something to you, kind of mentioning that and showing how rarely it lines up. But something I'd be interested to see is if in every one of those cases it was comparing apples to apples, by which I mean both guys actually being a senior. Like, it's no good if one guy was a junior. Of course, you're going to have a different guy win best senior quarterback in that year. So that's actually something I thought of.
That sounds like a lot of...
Oh, go ahead.
No, go for it. No, I was just going to say, that sounds like, figuring that out sounds like a lot of Excel sheets and algorithms and regression analysis, for which I wouldn't really go into it that deep, but it's enough for me to think perhaps, at the very least, Mason Rudolph deserves a look in the late first round, early second round, because he's a good quarterback. He just plays on a really sorry defensive team, which is saying something, because Mike Stoops is our defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it gives you pause when you think about the stats that offense was able to put up, and it's the second best offense behind OU in the country. So, yeah, I felt like he should have finished runner-up in every quarterback-related award. I just think he should win them.
Yeah, no, that's a very fair point. Oklahoma State had, as they typically do, a very powerful offense this year. But for whatever reason, they can just never seem to get past the Sooners, it seems like. I think they've won only a couple times, like 2 or 3 times in the last, 10 years or something like that. I know they had the punt return.
Yeah, in the course of Mike Gundy's tenure, they've only won twice.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
Baker Mayfield's won 3 times. It's kind of, the mediocrity is what they're rewarding up there, man. I mean, you finish 3rd in the conference, you're playing the Camping World Series, and you're going to give your head coach a raise to $5 million a year. I wouldn't pay for that. I would have kicked him out of the door to Tennessee. Instead, Tennessee lucked into the best defensive mind that doesn't have a head coaching position in Jeremy Pruitt, and seems Oklahoma State is tied to Mike Gundy in a way that they want to give him a mural with Eskimo Joe's. I get upset when I think about Oklahoma State and what it should be as opposed to what it is. It really should be a top 10 program every single year in November, straight through the month. It should be Oklahoma State and OU in the big conference title game in a year that Texas ain't very good. But here's the other thing. Texas ain't been very good. It's been OU carrying this conference for the past 3 years. And when you're rewarding a guy like Mike Gundy for finishing 3rd and having a really great dynamic offense but still having a piss-poor defense, I just don't get it. But again, that's college football. There's not a whole lot to get.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you kind of said it best. They've always kind of just been like the little brother, essentially, in the scenario. And I feel like that was kind of how it was with A&M as well. Obviously, they ended up leaving for the SEC, but we definitely saw a case there where, whether it was an inferiority complex or something like that, in A&M's case, they eventually, bolted for the SEC, and outside of maybe that first year, maybe 2, that really hasn't been that beneficial of a move for them until now, although, their recent hire of Jimbo Fisher at least turned a few heads there. That's at least a very good head coach to pull in. So,
well, I mean, in their defense, I kind of think that move to the SEC enabled them to pony up the kind of money that brings Jimbo Fisher to A&M away from Florida State. So, I hear what people are saying from a play standpoint. Finishing 8-5, 7-5, those kinds of seasons are not going to make anybody happy. But apparently, that partnership with the SEC has been able to make A&M enough money to be like, hey, Jimbo, we'll guarantee $75 million and make you the highest paid head coach in history. So I wouldn't go so far as to say it wasn't beneficial, even for Missouri, when we're really thinking about it. But, they obviously can't really compete year in and year out. So I'm going to be interested to see if Jimbo Fisher's the thing that gets Texas A&M back on the map as far as competing for a conference championship, because it seems like if you play in the SEC West, well, you got to go through Alabama and Auburn every year, and there ain't anybody that can do it. And if you play in the East, you got to go through Georgia and Florida on a good year, but Georgia ends up being in that title game every year. So, I'm not ready to just pile on A&M for their move out because it's been beneficial from a financial standpoint and from a footprint standpoint. But when you're firing a guy who you were also paying $5.5 million, yeah, you could wager that they're not very good on the football field. Yeah,
absolutely. But yeah, hopefully for their sake, this move works out for them. They feel like they were in the shadow for a long time, it seems like. So, good for them if they can make it work in the SEC. And I wouldn't mind seeing them, getting to an SEC title game if at all possible in the next couple of years. So, turning the attention back to the Big 12 championship game, I know when we last spoke, it was the Thursday before, so 2 days before that game. Obviously, in that game, Oklahoma, pretty much outside of the second quarter, issued a really, really impressive statement, pitched 3 shutout quarters. You take out the one quarter, they give up 17, and just a complete and utter beatdown of a very good TCU team, especially defensively. I believe the final was 41-17. Do you think with his 4-touchdown performance, there's any question that Baker should be the Heisman Trophy winner now?
Well, no. There hasn't been any question since October that he should be the Heisman Trophy winner. It's about whether or not the voters are going to see it the way that you and I see it. Mm-hmm. That's why the Unitas thing gives me pause. And yeah. It's just, you look, and the Burlsworth of all the trophies that Baker Mayfield should have had locked up and in the can for most outstanding walk-on of the year, they stiffed him for Luke Falk, and Luke Falk was wise enough and woke it up to be like, Baker, thanks for letting me win it this year.
Right.
So it's kooky and it's wacky, but if you look at the stats and you look at the kind of season that OU has had, and you look at the general trend that the Heisman Trophy has had when voting, you're the best player on the best team, right? Mm-hmm. And the best player on the best team is Baker Mayfield. But, again, when you look at the voting, like, for instance, with the AP College Player of the Year that he won earlier this morning, there are 5 votes that didn't go to Baker Mayfield.
Right.
Like who they go to? Who are the 5 Louisville folks that voted for Lamar Jackson?
Yeah, that was what I was gonna guess there. Probably Louisville. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't see it, man. But should he win it? Absolutely. Will he win it? Still remains to be seen. I've said that it's his trophy, and I think there's a lot of analysts that would say that his trophy. But college football is full of spite and it's full of bias. And politics is just the way to go. So would they find a way to try to rip it from him? I think they might try. But he should win it in one of the widest margins of victory since its inception in 1982.
So do you think any part of that has some kind of play from the Kansas incident, Baker grabbing his Mayfields, as we like to put it?
I think it's got you can go all the way back to Ohio State if you want to, man.
Fair point.
They don't like him.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, though. They don't like him because he's not on their team. That's what's great. That's where I get upset. It's one thing to say you just don't like a guy. But to say you don't like a guy because he's beating the hell out of your team and then he's styling on your team, to which I say, don't get styled on, son. You don't like it. Stop him.
Yeah,
exactly. And that bugs me, when you can't put aside your own feelings to look at the productivity and to look at the most efficient quarterback in college football history. Not 1 year, but 2 years. It's not as if he's just throwing dink and dumps either. He's dropping dimes 40 yards down the field, and yet we're having to have a conversation about could he somehow lose the Heisman Trophy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Baker on deep passes down the field, I think Baker actually ended up with the highest accuracy rate in the country. That or he was like number 2. He was somewhere 1 or 2, I believe, in passes of 20 yards plus this season. And his numbers against pressure were phenomenal as well. So really in every sense of it, every sense of the award for what you would expect it to amount to, Baker absolutely, I think, runs away with it. And, another thing that kind of stands out to me as well, OU has a fantastic offensive line. We're in agreement there. I do think it's also worth noting that in spite of having the offensive line, sometimes when your offensive line is so good, people can kind of say that that takes away a little bit from the quarterback. Now, you don't hear that much in college, but NFL equivalent, Dallas Cowboys, people discredit or try to underscore Dak Prescott a little bit, I think, because of the offensive line. Particularly last year, that was really a narrative. It was like, well, as long as he has to stand in the pocket, anybody can pick apart a defense. And in Baker's case, I believe while he had a top 15 rated, while he was rated in the top 15 in terms of amount of time to pass, like time in the pocket basically before collapse, I think he rated 13th in that. So still a very good offensive line, but for all the other stats, him ranking 1-2, 1-2, 1-1-1, something along those lines, his numbers are phenomenal, but it's not solely propped up by his offensive line. It is a lot of Baker just making plays, and I don't think you could necessarily plug anyone back there and get the same result.
No, I mean, and to think that you could, and people want to point to a guy like Mason Rudolph and say, yeah, if we put him back there, we get the same results. But also, you gotta watch what happens when that pocket is no longer there. Mm-hmm. I think about the TCU play where Baker went for 55 yards. And, I mean, I had to point it out to people that, hey, it's not just Kyler Murray, it's Baker. We had two different quarterbacks go for 50-yard rushes in back-to-back games against number one defenses. And by number one, I mean the ones who are on the field. So I don't think that people give that enough credit. Mason Rudolph can't move like that.
Right.
Lamar Jackson can move like that, but the fact is the pieces around him aren't as good. And you got to be able to do the best you can with what you have. We weren't having this conversation about Lamar Jackson last year because he had better pieces, and don't think you can penalize Baker for having better pieces around him for the second year in a row. And that's the other thing. We didn't know that they were going to be good pieces. We all expected this to be, a wait and see kind of year because there's so many freshmen all over the place, especially at skill position. Mm-hmm. You got freshmen in C.D. Lamb, you got a freshman in Trey Sermon, you got a freshman in Abdul Adams, you got a freshman in Michael Jones. I mean, you got guys that are unproven that stepped up in a big way. Grant Calcaterra, my goodness, to come out and play.
Right.
And to say nothing of your linchpins, in Orlando Brown on one side, Bobby Evans on one side, Eric Rand in the middle. All those guys. Bobby Evans got robbed of all Big 12. Mm-hmm. I mean, he is first team all Big 12 right tackle. Spite, I think, is what kept him off of that ballot. But, there's not a weakness on that line, which also I got to tip the hat to the Broyles Award finalist on this staff, Bill Beatonbow, because it wasn't so long ago that we were talking about the offensive line having an offensive tackles coach and then an interior line coach. And I didn't like it then, and nobody liked it then because the line was getting destroyed. So you bring in a guy like Bill Beatonbow says, no, they all belong to me. Get away. Get away from me. I got it. And all we've done is watch him recruit guys that don't really have a whole lot of, stature coming in, like Orlando Brown, 3-star recruit out of Georgia, who 3 days before signing day, Tennessee pulls his letter. Bill Beatonbow watches film on him and says, I don't think he's very good, but Bob, we can get him, and if he's willing to work, we'll work with him. Kid comes in here, raises his GPA from 1.7 to 3.0, and becomes a captain on this team and a first-round draft pick at left tackle. I mean, Bill Beatonbow, that staff, we got to give a nod to them. And all those guys have been more than happy to say Baker Mayfield is making this go. And I think that speaks volumes. When you look at what the staff has to say about their quarterback, the same guy that everybody wants to talk about his antics and his attitude, that staff loves him, and those kids love him. So I think the whole thing about his Mayfield and him planting the flag and asking Baylor, who's your daddy, and saying Oklahoma State, we expect to come up here and win, it gets overblown, but it's also by people who aren't paying attention to the program.
Yeah. And, you mentioned kind of how his teammates feel about him and everything. That was, I think, never more evident than the West Virginia game. I was actually there and saw when, I believe it was Dimitri Flowers and Orlando, brought out his jersey for the coin toss and all of that. I thought that was a really cool move. Just a very nice symbolic gesture and everything, I thought. Just to, show their captain, their normal captain, although for that day he wasn't captain, to show their leader basically, they got his back and they they're there for him and they believe in everything that the team's trying to do. So that was really cool. And when you were running through the guys, the freshmen, the guys who we didn't know much about made an impact. I know this guy is actually a JUCO transfer, but Hollywood Brown, another great example of just a guy who hadn't played at this level yet. We knew he was fast. I don't think we necessarily anticipated at the time, or at least at the start of the year, for him to have kind of the home run ball impact he's had. On another note, what do you think about CeeDee Lamb? I know he's had a phenomenal season. I was a little bit concerned, I think, watching that TCU game in the Big 12 title, just because it seemed like, I don't know if he ended up being held out or if he was held to like one catch, but that was really, it felt like one piece of the offense that I expected to kind of have a role, and I don't know if he was just kind of shut down or if just the game plan was working to expose better mismatches elsewhere on the field. What do you think on that?
I think that's all in Lincoln's game planning. I mean, he spoke to that when we were talking about where was Trey Sermon or Rodney Anderson or Abdul Adams or whoever early in the season. He would say, look, the matchups said that we need to go with this. And when I saw Michael Jones getting the ball early in the game, I said, oh, okay, well, Hollywood's going to come open here in just a second, because that's what they wanted. They wanted short, fast, speedy guys to beat an already fast TCU defense. And CeeDee Lamb is a lot of things, but breakaway speed ain't one of them, not like Michael Jones and not like Hollywood Brown. So those guys got the majority of the touches, and you saw them go for 50. So I'm not going to talk about, like, Jeff Badette is another guy that a lot of people are like, where'd he go?
Right.
Well, Jeff is still out there returning kicks and whatnot, and he runs the odd jet sweep. But the fact is, Lincoln is scheming to the defenses in front of him. And if that means that a guy like CeeDee Lamb is not going to get 7 catches a game, so be it. He still won 41-17.
Sure.
So like when it comes to the offense, I'm always excited to watch what Lincoln's doing, because unlike the defensive coordinator, I'm happy to say Lincoln's smarter than me, man. Like I'll watch his game plan, I go, I didn't see that. Like, that's awesome. Like I'll see it unravel in front of me, and I'll say, oh, that's beautiful. Just the way that you thought about that. I mean, even the little things, like that QB sneak when they went to the I formation, which caught everybody off guard, because what the hell was OU doing in the I formation? And that was all misdirection. It's all, hey, look at this hand while we go sleight of hand with this other hand, which is Lincoln Riley in a nutshell. It's all misdirection,
right?
Which is one of the reasons I think we're going to destroy Georgia, is because when Auburn beat them, it's because they had Georgia biting on every single fake there was, and then when they knew all the fakes, they knew how to sit and wait, but they haven't seen OU. And Lincoln's the best schemer that I've ever seen. I mean, just legitimately, he's the best prepared offensive coordinator I've ever seen. And now he's got this bevy of running backs and these wideouts and this quarterback who can throw the ball anywhere he wants to throw it. And, oh, yeah, if something happens to Baker, we got this guy, Kyler Murray, who can bop you for 66 yards on the first play of the scrimmage. Yeah. I get giddy thinking about playing against SEC defenses. But to your question, I don't think there's anything wrong with CeeDee. I just think that the game plan didn't dictate him getting the ball.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, and on that I formation Baker quarterback sneak you mentioned, it's always nice to see a quarterback sneak that inexplicably goes for 6 or 7 yards. Usually that's just a real dirty, just kind of dive at the the hash kind of play. So to see one where the guy's standing up 4 yards down the field as he's finally being tripped up, it's always a trip to see it like that. And that all goes back to what you pointed out with the misdirection and everything operating in the I formation. Just really good sleight of hand, tricked him up very well. So I spoke with you, speaking of Baker, I spoke with you, I actually think it was through Twitter. I'm reminded now that he's won 3 straight Big 12 titles. He's going to finish at least in the top 3 of the Heisman, or top 4 of the Heisman voting 3 straight years. Joins very elite company in that achievement. I believe it was Trammell who wrote something earlier this year, Barry Trammell, and I think it was early November that he wrote something on News OK about Baker Mayfield and kind of the case for why he might already be Oklahoma's greatest quarterback ever. And at the time, I kind of thought of it as like, Okay, he's definitely, if I'm basing it solely on skill, I can see that. But for a lot of people, the achievement, the end result is what matters. Obviously, the biggest marker everyone wants to jump to, whether it's pro or college, is championships, rings. Did you win a national title or a Super Bowl or NBA championship, whatever the sport? Next things people look at are things like the Heisman, basically the MVP trophy and things of that nature. Now that we've had a few weeks, do you think that Baker has in fact cemented himself as the greatest quarterback in Oklahoma history, or do you think it still would have to go to, or do you think it would still be debatable, I should say, pending the rest of this season, the last game, hopefully 2 games left?
Well, I mean, first you got to start talking about eras, right? Because J.C. Watts didn't play quarterback when the air raid was a thing. Jamel Holloway didn't play quarterback in an air raid. He played in the wishbone. He's a running back that can throw the ball. Jason White was one of the first iterations of the dual threat quarterback at OU. So he introduced an evolution, and Sam Bradford may be the best pro prospect to ever come through OU at the quarterback position. But for me personally, I think it's Baker Mayfield. But I think it's Baker Mayfield for a number of reasons, not just the stats and the efficiency and his ability to read the game, but how many hype men have we seen play quarterback? How many guys have we seen play quarterback that are able to get the defense up, that are able to look the defense in the eye and say, go get me the ball and I'm going to go score? We got to get Baker the ball. That's a powerful thing. And I think a lot of people are going to miss that when he's gone. It's just thinking about that. That guy's usually a linebacker. That guy's usually a DB. That guy's might be a wide receiver, but he's never a quarterback.
Yeah.
Quarterbacks are, they're mild-mannered, they're controlled, they got to stay even-keeled. Not my guy. And not only does my guy not have to be that dude, he thrives on anger and on, being the underdog. He's looking for reasons for you to doubt him. It's the way he knows how to play. And whether that's to his credit or to his detriment, so far it's only worked for him. From being a scrawny quarterback at Lake Travis to not getting the offers that he wanted, to walking on to Texas Tech, to not getting the scholarship at Texas Tech, to the small hands comments from Gary Patterson. I mean, you just keep loading them up, which is why thought it was funny that Georgia fans thought it was fun to spam his phone number on the same day they find out they're going to play him. It's like, okay, I was worried. I'm not anymore because he's pissed. And when he's pissed, he goes and he drops 40,
Right.
So I got to say that it's got to be Baker Mayfield for me because I would want to play for him.
Yeah.
I don't know that I would want to be throwing my body into harm's way for Sam Bradford or Jason White. No disrespect to the Heisman winners. But I want a guy who's going to look me in the eye and fire me up because that's what's going to get me out there to go knock another 250-pound monster in the head to keep him off of your 6-foot, 210-pound light self who doesn't get hit. Because I usually don't like quarterbacks. I usually think that, they're preppy. They don't like to get hit. They get to wear blue jerseys or red jerseys. This guy, he wants to go hit people.
Yeah.
And I want to play for that kind of a quarterback.
Yeah, excellent point there. I think at the time I first saw the article, my initial reaction was that I still held him in terms of probably complete skill. I still probably held him in that 1A kind of area. But for me, I think the standard I kind of held in my mind was Bradford at the time. Although I think Bradford was a very different type of leader. I think he was kind of, I don't know if silent leader is more the thing, but he definitely didn't have the moxie or attitude that you get from Baker. And I think that because he can pump up his entire team, not just the offensive line or the skill players around him, you'll see him get, in the defense's face and fire them up when they need a big stop going out on the field. So I think it's that kind of factor, that X factor that I don't know that we've seen from another quarterback at Oklahoma. Not many quarterbacks in college football in general exude that kind of aura about them and are still, worth their salt as far as on-field play. So yeah, I think at this point I have to say I'm in agreement that it is Baker as the best quarterback in Oklahoma history. Obviously, if he can cement that even further, should he be able to win a national championship, the 8th in program history. But even if he doesn't, I still think in terms of everything he's done and shown, I think he's your guy at this point. But anyway, pivoting to now a more serious, I guess, discussion and everything. I know that we haven't gotten many details on this the last day or so, but I still feel like it bears at least some mentioning on this. The situation with Rodney Anderson. I know that he is facing, I believe it's 8 rape by instrumentation allegations. There hasn't been an actual charges filed, but there was the VPO, the Victim Protection Order, filed and everything like that. Do you have any other info or details, key things just worth noting on that?
Yeah, I put up a video about this earlier. Brooke Pryor, the Oklahoman, kind of buried in her story that she spoke with OU officials who saw some text messages that the alleged victim sent Rodney Anderson post the incident on November 16th that alluded to her offering him invitations and him declining, which leads the OU officials to believe he's not going to get charged. But, the Norman PD is still conducting their investigation. The university still is conducting their investigation. And we have to, you have to remember that just because there are no charges filed does not mean he cleared Title IX on this.
Right.
And you talk about 21-year-old man and you talk about 23-year-old woman. So there's still a lot of facts that need to be sussed out here. And I want facts. I want to be clear. I want to be transparent. I want to be consistent. This is not the time or the place to play with this or to get it wrong. You got 2 lives in the balance here. And no matter how it goes, somebody's life changes forever. And that can't be taken lightly. This is one of those things that for me is beyond football.
Right.
And another thing, there's no reason to pile on this woman at all. I make it a point not to mention this woman's name or her connection to the university because that doesn't help. Nobody is supposed to file an emergency protective order or a victim protective order unless they fear danger. And she said that in her statement. Mm-hmm. And I think that deserves to be taken seriously. But outside of that, whatever the Norman PD finds out and whatever the school, University of Oklahoma, finds out, that's what I'm going to go with. I'm not going to go with hearsay or what somebody says may have happened or might not have happened or some, jackass on Twitter who wants to go around yelling about what he thinks might have happened based on his mama's cousin's aunt's, secondhand story. That's irresponsible, and it doesn't help the situation. So I know it's hard, and I know it sucks, but we got to sit back on our hands and wait, man. So the Rose Bowl is January 1st. There's a lot of time in between there. There's a hearing on the docket for December 18th. The best you can do if you're an OU fan is concentrate on things like tonight, concentrate on the good parts of OU, and hope that the university continues to try to learn from past mistakes and do the right thing. Because at the end of the day, there are people that are listening to the show. There are people that love OU football with daughters and sons, and they have feelings about this. Mm-hmm. And I respect the hell out of that. And asking anybody to be patient about this kind of thing, especially in this very charged political environment we live in, is hard. I recognize that. But being level-headed and being reasonable is the only way to go with this, and it's the only thing that you can do. You live by your morals and allow them to live by theirs, and let's see what the law has to say about it.
Yeah, very, very well said there. And, obviously, if we do end up in a situation where, for whatever reason, he does not play in that Rose Bowl game, the good news from a football standpoint, again, not to make any light at all of the seriousness of the situation, I'm just saying, like, as it pertains to the team, they have good depth at the position. So I don't think that it would be a death blow to any championship hopes for people who want to look at this purely from a football standpoint. But again, that is way secondary to everything happening with the woman in question and everything like that. So not to linger on that at all. We'll move on to the Rose Bowl game itself. Now, from what I was able to find, this is the first Rose Bowl for OU since 2003, January 2003, when they played Washington State. I believe they won that game something like 34-14. I'm pretty sure that was the last one that they played in. So it'll be OU number 2 versus number 3 Georgia, and the SEC champion, man, they do have a stacked defense. I know you've been doing some film study on them and all of that. What can you tell us about Georgia's defense in general, and whether or not that should be of any significant concern for OU's offense?
Well, look, man, that front seven is full of monsters. All right, I mean they're big, they're fast. If you pad the ball, they're on top of you. Mm-hmm. If you hold the ball, they're on top of you. If you don't go through your reads, they're on top of you. They love to stunt and twist up front. They run fast. They run free. Roquan Smith is as good as advertised, middle linebacker. So they got the horses to run, and they like to run 4-3 single high. They like to run 4-3 cover 3 when they see 21 personnel on the field. But they're susceptible, like I was saying earlier, to play action and run pass option, because they love to just jump a fake. Because here's the thing. They want to have 8 men in the box even when they don't look like they have 8 men in the box. Their first priority is to read run at every single level. That's how their corners play technique. That's how their safeties play technique. And their free safety is always over the top of the wide receiver. That would be the tight end or the slot receiver. Stop me if I'm going too fast, though, because I get real deep into football terminology real quick.
Oh, no worries.
So
by all means.
When they run 4 verticals, when OU runs 4 verticals, they're looking for it. They put a safety in there to rob, all right? So you're not going to be able to run a straight-up air raid offense against Georgia. They're too fast, and they've seen enough air raid with Missouri and Josh Heupel's offense to know what they're looking at kind of, sort of, when it gets to OU. But they were exposed by Auburn. If you can run zone read, if you can run misdirection, if you can run bubble screens to one side and you force that nickel, that safety, to try to come down and make a play, you can beat them. Now, that said, again, if you try to go at them straight up, they're gonna destroy you. They don't give up the middle of the field, and I don't want to take on either one of those tackles up the middle. I don't want it. I expect to see a lot of plays to the outside. And they make great use of the inside part of the field. So but you also want to put their linebackers in a bind, and that's most linebackers in most schemes. You recruit freak athletes to play those positions, and then you try to make them 2 men instead of 1, which I hate. That's not the way I would coach a defense. But when you're Georgia and you got monsters at every position, you can afford to do that, especially when all you see is run-oriented pro-style offenses. Like I said, Missouri and Auburn are the outliers. Everybody else, you're going to get 25, 30 rushes a game, and you're going to get pretty typical pro sets. So, but it's tailor-made for us. We're finesse, we're fast. We can be physical, but we only like to be physical with the run when we see you backing off. So it's going to be fun if you're an OU fan. It's going to be a lot of fun. And remember this, the last SEC team to beat Oklahoma was Johnny Manziel's Texas A&M when he looked at Mike Stoops' defense and took it apart in the Cotton Bowl. Mm-hmm. Just like everybody else playing against the Mike Stoops defense, saying, I'm going to get mine. So you got destroyed by the Heisman winner there. So, but after that, what'd you do? You destroyed Alabama in the Sugar Bowl with Trevor Knight, who was anything but a passing quarterback before that game. Mm-hmm. And then you destroyed Tennessee at home. You destroyed Tennessee at Neyland. And then you get Auburn, one of the prize horses of the SEC, in the Sugar Bowl again. Mm-hmm. So, in Georgia, this is their first trip to Pasadena. They're going to be a little out of their depth. They haven't been there before. They don't know what to look for. And, they're not used to being on this kind of stage before. And plus, they really can't score like we can score. That's the thing a lot of people are missing. Like, I haven't broken down the offensive side of the ball yet because that's not my worry.
Right.
They're more like the Minnesota Vikings in the NFL, where the offense's job is not to screw it up enough to where the defense can't get a takeaway and get you back on the board. But I think that Mike Stoops has a good track record against SEC teams because they've been more to his 4-3 principles, which is what he should be coaching all along. Mm-hmm. But, I think that's one of the reasons why we've done so well against them. So, stay out of the middle of the field. don't pad the ball, Baker. Don't hold the ball, Baker.
Yeah.
Get rid of the ball, Baker, and run pass options and misdirection plays as much as you can to keep those linebackers and that free safety guessing.
Do you have any concern about the at the time that it'll actually be played? It'll be about a month layoff. Do you have any concern about rust or anything like that? I kind of got the impression in 2015 against Clemson that there was some rust on the offense, and I vaguely recall hearing someone say, I don't know if it was Baker or just a different offensive player, but suggesting that they almost would have preferred the game had been played like the week after beating Oklahoma State, because they were firing on all cylinders and they were red hot. You lay off for a month, and sometimes it can be a little difficult to get back into a groove. Do you think that might be a factor in this case at the Rose Bowl?
No more than it was a factor in 2014 when they beat Alabama, or 2016 when they beat Auburn, or, could it be a factor? Yeah, but it's not as if this team is not used to waiting a month to play football.
Mm-hmm.
You want to keep playing because you feel good. That's why you want to keep playing. It's not because you're scared that you're going to lose momentum over the course of a month. Look, from where I'm sitting, as a coach and a player, you give me a month to prepare for a football game, I'm going to destroy you, because I'm used to having 5 days, 6 days, to prepare for a football game, maybe 2 weeks if I got to bye. But you're essentially giving me a fall camp to prepare for the opening game of the season and to heal up. I don't see how this is a bad thing in any way for either one of these teams, to be quite honest. I mean, it's probably worse for Georgia because they got to fly clear across the country and get comfortable, But from OU standpoint, no. You get to heal up a little bit. Those ankles that get tweaked, those shoulders that hurt a little bit, you get some more stem and ice. You get a little bit of time off, but you also get to do nothing else but break down Georgia film and prepare for that game. So I don't think this is a bad thing, and they've shown that more often than not. So, I mean, I know that people want to talk about the Clemson game, but again, it's Clemson was a better football team that year. They showed it in the Russell Athletic Bowl, and they showed it in the playoff. So I don't. It's a wash for me.
Right.
It's a month that you don't have to play football.
So how do you feel this offense stacks up against that 2015 offense? I know if you look at name value at each position, you might be inclined. Granted, we don't have, I guess, proper scope looking at this offense. Now that it's been a couple of years since 2015, we can look back and be like, oh, man, that team had, D.D. Westbrook as like a number 2 or 3 receiver and everything like that. And, you hear the star power of the name and everything, and I think it gives you hindsight, but it wasn't the same D.D. Westbrook, for instance, that we saw the next year, after the Ohio State game and all of that. So how do you think this offense, based on your assessment, kind of stacks up against that 2015 offense that carried OU into the playoff last time?
I don't have to look at the name recognition. I can just, look at the yardage and the stats. I mean, this 2017 team is putting up 583 yards of offense a game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, look, start with that. Start with a better quarterback, when we got the awards to prove it.
Yep.
I mean, you still got the same sort of horses at linebacker and at defensive line. I perhaps the only knock you might say is the corners on that team were better.
Mm-hmm.
That's a better Jordan Thomas, and Zach Sanchez was still a ball hawk who couldn't tackle, but he's a ball hawk. He picked passes off. The safeties on this team are better. Ahmad Thomas was mostly he's mostly a hybrid linebacker because you couldn't count on him to get picks or break up passes. And, when Stephen Parker was playing back there, it was almost like, thank God we have somebody playing safety who's a ball hawk. Now you got Will Johnson's coming on as a ball hawk.
Mm-hmm.
And you're kind of deep at safety now with Robert Barnes and Khalil Houghton and Chance Sylvie. I mean, there's a lot of guys that you could throw at that position now. Kenneth Murray Jr. shown he's going to be a force for the next 2 years. And we got guys coming in to help place with Emmanuel Beal, and Levi Draper's going to come back. And you still Obo. Let's not forget is Obo.
Right.
So it's a better football team in 2017. And I hear people talking about D.D. Westbrook, but Hollywood Brown is very close to D.D. Westbrook. they're the same size. They got the same background in JUCO. They came into the system. They learned the system quickly, and they've shown out in the system. So, I mean, all the things that you want to point to as strengths of that 2015 team, you can point to as strengths and then some as the 2017 team. So this is a better football team.
Yeah. I would think maybe the only advantage defensively I think stands out to me for the 2015 team. I know we have Obo now. I think Eric Stryker and Charles Tapper kind of anchoring that defensive line. I feel like maybe that might have been, and I haven't looked at like the stats to side by side to compare it, but it feels like that team maybe got more pressure and more sacks on the quarterback. I know our defensive line does pretty well holding its ground, and it seems like they've started coming on late. Obo's been here pretty much the whole year doing it, but I think maybe that's one place that my impression still might be leaning towards the 2015 squad. But other than that, I fully.
Well, Darreck,
fully
I would ask you who on this defensive line you would say is not as good as on that 2015 line. Like I hear you saying Charles Tapper, but I'll point to DJ Ward. And I hear you already bowing to Obo over in Stryker. Obo's a bigger, stronger man who plays on the opposite side of the ball, by the way. He plays mostly a runner shit against the front side of a quarterback as opposed to his blind side, which is a different kind of end. I would say that the defensive tackles here are probably a bit better. Like I would love to see Romar on this team because he was on that team. But also, I mean, you're talking about a Jordan. I think it's not Jordan Phillips. I don't think Jordan Phillips is still on that team. So you're talking about a Jordan Wade up front playing the nose, as opposed to a Devontae Lampkin and or Kenneth Mann and or Amani Bledsoe. Like the defensive line on that defense is the deepest unit on that defense. So like, I mean, I hear you, but I also don't think that holds up. I mean, I hear you about sacks and whatnot, but also there were most of the time 4 men on the line of scrimmage on that 2015 team.
Good point.
Running this 3-3-5 noise has come lately. So they had the benefit of an extra linebacker out there on the LOS. And usually his name was Eric Stryker.
Yeah.
Now we thought that was going to be the position that Obo played, but it's really Obo playing a modified, like 4 technique, which sucks. I hate that. And then you're asking him to drop back into coverage. Eric Stryker didn't drop back into coverage. Eric Stryker's job was to beat up a left tackle. So I imagine what it would be like if you let Obo, who's bigger and stronger than Eric Stryker, go after a guy like that. He might have similar stats. And not to say nothing, but Obo's defensive player of the year in the conference. So it's not as if he's not a cut above Eric Stryker at that same position, but it's not really the same position. It's a hybrid, and that's what kind of sucks. You got positionless players on a football team that needs positions. But then I'm going to get into a Mike Stoops rant, and I don't want to do that.
No worries. No, that's great insight there. So I guess if we look at the overall college football playoff rankings and everything, obviously I know you were dismayed to see Alabama get the 4 spot and everything there. And I agree with you fully. I think it kind of devalues the conference title, the conference title game and everything like that. I know Ohio State got in last year. They weren't the conference champion though. And so you've had 2 straight years where the Big Ten champion now did not go to the game. And I do kind of believe that while Alabama historically has been great, I feel like their strength of schedule this year, and what is something we always hear, if you're going to lose in college football, it needs to be early on in the first few weeks where you have time to get it in your rearview mirror and to show you're playing your best football at the end when it really matters. And Alabama's loss was literally their last regular season game. Didn't even get to play in their conference title game. So not to kind of step on the toes of your feelings on that. I guess what's your impression in a nutshell? Do you think that the system is so flawed at this point that it's borderline rigged, kind of like a Joel Klatt would say, or do you think this is just kind of a fluke year? Although I think I know the answer.
Well, I mean, I've said the answer. I made a video about this,
Yeah.
and I was livid when I saw Alabama got that 4 spot for a number of reasons. The first is you're telling me that conference championships don't matter, and if they don't matter, then why the hell do we play them? Now, you can give me the money argument, sure, but I'm talking about football. We play conference championships to find out who the best team in the league is, and then we put that regional champion up against the rest of the regional champions to figure out a national champion. If that sounds like high school football, it's because it is.
Yeah.
And it's not just high school football. They do it at Division III. They do it at Division II. They do it at the Division 1A level, or whatever they're calling it, FCS now. But FBS is the only time where that doesn't happen. You do that in the NFL, you got to win your district, or you get a wild card. And that's where I say an 18 playoff. If you win your district, your conference, and you're a Power 5 team, you're in. And then you can get one of these wild card spots, which we would call Group of 5 and at-large berths, and you make it fair because you've taken the scoreboard out of it. Football is played to see who wins, not who you think is going to win, not who you think is the best team, to see who wins. That's why we have scoreboards. That's why we play the games. So don't tell me that you think that Alabama's the best football team when they didn't even win their division, let alone their conference championship.
Yeah.
That's not right. And that's more than rigging it. That's cheating players.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like it when Ohio State jumped Penn State last year, and I don't like it when Alabama jumped not just Ohio State, but USC and UCF. Like, UCF's got to be looking at this college football playoff going, this is BS. We're undefeated. Yeah. We're the only undefeated team left in college football who won a conference championship, and we are not anywhere near playing for a national title. That's just not right. That team should have a chance to get, skull dragged and mollywopped, but they should have that opportunity. And I'm not against turning college football into an oligarchy, even if it is already. I want it to be a meritocracy. You win, you play. You lose, you don't. And now you're rewarding an Alabama team who not only played a sorry schedule and wants to hold up a Florida State team that finished the season 6-6, but they scheduled Mercer in November.
Yep.
Where's Mercer? Where's Mercer, Darreck?
Somewhere southeast.
Exactly. It's in Georgia.
Georgia, okay.
It's in Georgia. I think it's in Macon, Georgia. Shout out to my buddy Joe, if he's listening. He works at the Macon Telegraph. Anyway,
nice.
Look, man, I hate that there were enough people in that room that decided that Alabama was one of the 4 best teams in college football, either because they want an SEC team in, which is shallow, but not out of the question, or the only argument that makes sense to me is you got enough college football head coaches in there or former coaches that are looking at Alabama going, I'm putting them in because I wouldn't want to play them. Which yeah. I see that argument. But, man, they also didn't earn the right to play you if you're in the college football playoff because they didn't win their conference championship. So that's out too. So don't piss on my head and tell me it's raining. That's BS. I hate this. I hate that Alabama got in. I really do. And not just because of the SEC thing, not just because of Alabama, but because you told so many other teams who played their hearts out, who won their conference championships, that you don't matter. USC, you don't matter. Ohio State, you don't matter. It doesn't matter that J.T. Barrett had his knee scoped a week before so he could play in this game.
Right.
And then played his heart out. And they nearly gave away the game, but they still won. Mm-hmm. You're going to look at UCF, who went winless and then went 12-0, and say, yeah, that story you guys put together doesn't matter. It's not good enough. It's not good enough because you don't play in the right conference. Miss me with that, man. I hate that. I hate it so much.
Yeah, it does definitely seem like a system that needs to be tweaked. I do favor the playoff over like the BCS system we had before, but I think it needs to be expanded. The one I hear most often, and I know you've kind of championed it as well, is the 8-team playoff, where your 5 Power 5 conference champions are automatic bids, and then you got 3 at-large teams as well. That's where you can get in, an Alabama who didn't play in their game, but you also give an opportunity, whether it's a year where you got independent Notre Dame being worthy of it, or you have, a or UCF. They're not Power 5, right? No. But teams like that where you give them an opportunity to make a push as well. So whether they go that route, I think they should. Whether they will, I think, is kind of a question, because I think one thing they love doing is, even though the committee is infuriating and has been pretty much every year of the playoff, it is something that from the time the first committee rankings drop, it's always a point of discussion and of controversy. And as a result, it seems to draw a lot of discussion and a lot of attention. And if you have an 8-team playoff, although I think you get the best team most likely coming out, or at least the hottest team coming out as champion at the end of the year, I think they are perhaps concerned about losing that real drive and focus that the weekly discussion brings from having 4. That's just my thinking on it. Again, I favor the 8-team system over the 4.
I don't care about their politics, and I don't care what they think is going to drive weekly discussion. I care about finding out the best team to play in a college football playoff to determine the most worthy national champion.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care if that doesn't fit their political agenda. I don't think football is about politics. Matter of fact, it's not about politics. That's the reason we play the game.
Right.
It's to remove politics from it. So I don't care what they think is going to raise their ratings. I don't think what they care is going to be the best thing to boost the college football playoff as a brand. I love high school football. You think high school football is making anybody any money? There's making a lot of people a lot of money.
Yeah.
There's a lot of kids that want to play Division I money. But here's the thing. They're not so cruel that they want to take away district titles as a form of distinguishing who plays in the playoff.
Right.
They're not so cruel as to believe that they, the gods on the committee, get to pick who the best football teams are. No, this is not a point and pick sport. It's a sport where you got to win. And if you don't win, it doesn't matter. And I love that. I love that that's black and white. You either have the W or you have the L.
Yeah, I agree fully. All right. Well, I won't keep you any longer. RJ, thanks for coming on. Always a pleasure to have you on and talk football. Very informative, very entertaining. If you guys haven't already, subscribe to RJ on YouTube, RJ Young Writes, and you can also find him on Twitter at RJ_Young. RJ, is there anything else you want to add to it, or anything just you want to say?
No, man, it's fun. It's fun, and I would appreciate it if you send me a link and send me the audio so I can put it on my channel, drive people over here, because you guys need a better following.
Thank you. Not a problem at all. We will definitely get on that and share that audio and video with you. And yeah, thanks for coming on. We'll have to do it again soon sometime.
All right, brother. Have a good one.
Thanks. You too. Okay. So, that pretty much will bring our show to a conclusion here. Always great to have RJ on. We've had him on a couple times now, and really a great mind. I know he did the OU beat for a while, and so he's got a lot of great insight and everything on that. Can break down even the ins and outs of defenses and coverages, offensive scheming and things like that. Really just something that even a somewhat studious fan, like I like to consider myself, he always teaches me something new. So that's always exciting to hear. And we definitely enjoy having him on. So we're going to have to do that again here sometime soon. Now, if you guys haven't already, if you're listening to this on the DallasProspect.com, then obviously you've already found the website, and I don't really need to draw you there again. But if you're watching this on YouTube Live, which is kind of a experiment on our part, our first time trying to stream live on YouTube, I'm not sure how that's going. It might take me a couple broadcasts to really, work out the kinks and everything with that, get the stream nice and strong. That sounds weird. We'll get that worked out, and we're gonna try and cross post. So anytime I'm live on air, I will be live on Mixlr, so you can find it on the site or our Mixlr page if you'd rather go that route. and we'll also have it where we're on YouTube. You can find us on Twitter at Dallas Prospect. We're all on Facebook. Give us a like, give us a follow. We are trying to grow the show, grow the network, and keep making great content for you guys. So, yeah, Dallas Prospect is pretty much your home for all things sports and pop culture. Our eye is focused towards the Dallas area, but as you know, our discussions with RJ have shown, we'll look to the broader sense as well. We'll take a look at the Big 12 as a whole for the conference. Got a lot of great Cowboys coverage with my man Law Nation. So yeah, if you haven't been checking those out, I highly recommend it. And special thank you again to our sponsor for this whole shindig, Mexi-Go Restaurant and Club. Now, that is a Mexican food restaurant over in, well, they got a couple locations. Allen and Plano, I believe, are the two locations. I've only been to the one in Plano, I believe. But great food, great atmosphere, all that. Great drinks, great margaritas, the Millionaire, or if you want to feel bold, the Billionaire Margarita. So, this is Darreck Kirby signing off. Until next time, guys. Thanks.